Something screamed in the darkness 6,000 meters below the surface, and no human ear was ever meant to hear it. The recording lasted only 19 seconds before every instrument aboard the research vessel Horizon failed simultaneously, leaving behind a frozen screen and a room full of stunned scientists staring at each other in complete silence. The ocean had always been mysterious, but this was different. This was not the random groan of shifting tectonic plates or the distant song of a blue whale. The sound carried rhythm, intention, and a strange pattern that repeated every 7 seconds like an invisible heartbeat hidden beneath the deepest waters on Earth. Marine biologist Dr. Elena Carter listened to the recovered audio dozens of times after the systems rebooted, convinced that each replay revealed another detail buried beneath layers of static. She had spent 20 years studying deep-sea ecosystems and knew better than anyone that the abyss remained the largest unexplored habitat on the planet. More than 80% of the ocean floor had never been directly observed by humans, leaving countless species undiscovered and entire ecosystems untouched. Sunlight vanished within the first few hundred meters below the surface, replaced by endless darkness where crushing pressure exceeded 1,000 times the atmosphere experienced at sea level. Temperatures hovered just above freezing. Yet life flourished in astonishing forms that seemed impossible according to ordinary biological rules. Transparent fish drifted through black water with organs glowing inside their bodies like floating lanterns. Giant squid hunted with eyes larger than dinner plates, capable of detecting the faintest shimmer in eternal night. Vampire squid spread delicate webs between their arms, feeding not on blood but on marine snow, the endless rain of microscopic organic material descending from the bright world above. Anglerfish carried living lanterns that attracted curious prey before disappearing into rows of needle-like teeth. Dumbo octopuses gently flapped ear-shaped fins while ghostly sea cucumbers crawled across soft sediment collecting nutrients that had taken months to fall from the distant surface. Entire forests of tube worms surrounded hydrothermal vents where boiling mineral-rich water erupted from cracks in Earth's crust, supporting colonies of bacteria that transformed toxic chemicals into energy without a single ray of sunlight. These remarkable organisms proved that life could thrive even in conditions once believed completely hostile. Elena had devoted her career to documenting these extraordinary creatures, believing that every expedition revealed another piece of an unfinished puzzle describing the hidden engine of Earth's oceans. Yet the mysterious signal suggested that something else existed far below known ecosystems, somewhere beyond mapped trenches and surveyed ridges. Satellite measurements had detected a subtle increase in heat rising from a remote section of the Pacific Ocean known as the Hadal Expanse, an isolated trench deeper than Mount Everest was tall. Autonomous underwater vehicles sent to investigate never returned. Their final transmissions contained fragmented sonar images showing enormous vertical formations unlike any geological structure previously recorded. Some resembled towering pillars while others curved into impossible arches that cast shadows despite the absence of light. Official reports blamed equipment malfunction caused by pressure, but Elena noticed inconsistencies buried inside technical logs that others ignored. Compass readings spun wildly despite being far from magnetic anomalies. Water chemistry changed without explanation over distances of only a few meters. Unknown microorganisms coated damaged hulls, disappearing into dust within hours after reaching the surface. The deeper investigators searched, the stranger the evidence became. Governments quietly funded additional expeditions under scientific classifications while carefully restricting public access to collected data. Rumors spread among experienced oceanographers that every mission returned with less information than expected, as though the deep itself resisted observation. Some researchers retired unexpectedly, refusing interviews. Others insisted that the ocean was not simply hiding undiscovered animals but preserving an ancient balance humanity had never noticed because it had never ventured deep enough to disturb it. Elena rejected superstition, relying only on evidence, yet even she could not explain the newest recording echoing through her headphones. As the horizon prepared for the most ambitious descent in modern history, she stood alone on the moonlit deck watching calm waves conceal nearly 11 kilometers of water beneath her feet. Somewhere below, in absolute darkness older than civilization itself, something had answered humanity's curiosity. And for the first time since people began exploring the sea, the ocean no longer felt silent. It felt awake. The descent began before sunrise, when the sea was calm enough to resemble a sheet of polished glass hiding an endless abyss beneath its surface. Dr. Elena Carter climbed inside the titanium sphere of the submersible Asteria with pilot Marcus Hale and systems engineer Dr. Priya Nandakumar. Once the hatch was sealed, the outside world disappeared behind layers of reinforced metal and acrylic. A gentle vibration passed through the vessel as it was lowered into the Pacific Ocean by the massive crane aboard the horizon. Sunlight surrounded them for only a few minutes before fading into a deep sapphire blue. Schools of tuna and dolphins vanished above them while jellyfish drifted like transparent umbrellas through the water. At 200 meters the colors of the world began to disappear. Red was the first to fade, followed by orange and yellow, until nearly everything outside the viewport appeared in mysterious shades of blue. Elena quietly watched the depth monitor climb higher with every passing second. 300 meters. 500. 1,000. The pressure outside increased relentlessly, enough to crush an ordinary submarine within moments, yet the perfectly engineered sphere around them remained silent except for the occasional metallic click as the hull adjusted to the immense force. Marcus smiled calmly, though he had completed more than 60 deep dives during his career. "This is the point where the ocean truly begins," he whispered. Elena nodded. Above them was the familiar sea known to swimmers, fishermen, and sailors. Below them stretched a realm visited by fewer people than had walked on the moon. Their external lights pierced the darkness in narrow beams, revealing drifting particles known as marine snow. Every tiny fragment had once belonged to life near the surface. Dead plankton, microscopic algae, fish scales, waste, and fragments of organic tissue slowly sank toward the ocean floor, feeding countless creatures that survived without sunlight. Suddenly hundreds of tiny flashes surrounded the submersible. At first Elena believed reflections were bouncing off suspended particles, but then the lights moved independently. A swarm of lanternfish emerged from the darkness, each carrying rows of glowing organs called photophores beneath its body. They flashed in synchronized patterns that confused predators while helping individuals recognize members of their own species. A silver hatchetfish followed close behind, its flattened body reflecting almost no light, making it nearly invisible from below. Moments later an enormous siphonophore drifted across their path. Although it appeared to be a single giant organism stretching more than 20 meters long, it was actually a living colony composed of thousands of genetically identical individuals working together as one creature. Some specialized in swimming. Others captured prey, while others handled reproduction or digestion. Nature had evolved cooperation so completely that no individual colony member could survive alone. Deeper still, strange shrimp released clouds of glowing blue chemicals into the water when disturbed, creating brilliant explosions of bioluminescence that briefly illuminated the surrounding darkness. Priya recorded every species while autonomous cameras mapped the environment in extraordinary detail. Yet despite the beauty surrounding them, something felt strangely absent. Predators normally followed such concentrations of smaller animals, but no large hunters appeared on the scanners. The ecosystem seemed unusually quiet. Marcus adjusted the thrusters as the submersible crossed a steep underwater cliff descending into an unexplored trench. Their sonar displayed towering rock walls carved by millions of years of geological activity. Black corals clung to the cliffs like frozen trees, some estimated to be more than 4,000 years old, making them among the oldest living animals on Earth. Nearby, delicate glass sponges formed intricate skeletons of pure silica that resembled crystal sculptures crafted by invisible artists. Giant isopods, distant relatives of ordinary wood lice, wandered across the sediment with slow deliberate movements, searching endlessly for food that rarely arrived. Elena smiled despite the tension. Every meter revealed another reminder that evolution could produce forms more extraordinary than any science fiction writer had imagined. Then every bioluminescent creature vanished at once. The lanternfish scattered. The shrimp disappeared into cracks. Even the drifting jellyfish altered their direction as if fleeing from something neither sonar nor cameras could detect. An uneasy silence filled the cabin. Marcus frowned at the navigation display while Priya checked every sensor twice. Animals don't abandon an entire water column without a reason, Elena said softly. Before anyone answered, a deep vibration echoed through the hull. It was not an impact. It was a sound traveling through the water itself. 7 seconds later, the same vibration returned with perfect precision. The mysterious heartbeat from the recording had found them long before they found its source. The rhythmic pulse continued to travel through the water every 7 seconds as the Asteria descended beyond 4,000 meters, yet the deeper they traveled the weaker their fear became and the stronger their curiosity grew. Elena carefully compared the sound with every known biological recording stored inside the onboard database, but nothing matched its frequency or structure. It resembled neither whale songs nor tectonic activity. It felt almost mechanical, although no human machine could survive at such depths for long. Marcus gently guided the submersible toward a vast plain that stretched beneath them like another world. Their powerful lights slowly revealed towering chimneys rising from the seafloor. Some reached nearly 20 meters into the darkness, continuously releasing clouds of black mineral-rich water that looked like underwater smoke. They had reached an active hydrothermal vent field. Temperatures inside the vent fluids exceeded 350 degrees Celsius, yet the surrounding seawater remained only a few degrees above freezing because of the crushing pressure. It was one of the most extreme environments on Earth, and yet it overflowed with life. Thousands of giant tube worms formed dense forests around the vents, each nearly 2 meters long with brilliant crimson plumes extending into the water. Elena smiled as she explained to Marcus that these extraordinary animals possessed no mouths, no stomachs, and no digestive systems. Instead, they survived because billions of chemosynthetic bacteria lived inside their bodies, transforming hydrogen sulfide released by the vents into usable energy. Unlike every forest on land, this ecosystem depended entirely on chemistry rather than sunlight. White crabs covered the rocky surfaces in enormous numbers, feeding on bacterial mats that coated the mineral deposits. Blind shrimp clustered around the hottest openings, sensing heat through specialized organs on their backs instead of relying on vision. Giant mussels formed thick colonies while pale octopuses patiently hunted between the rocks. Every species had evolved to survive conditions once believed completely impossible for complex life. Priya launched a small autonomous drone to collect water samples while Elena carefully documented the astonishing biodiversity. Chemical analysis immediately revealed unusually high concentrations of dissolved iron, sulfur compounds, methane, and several unidentified organic molecules that did not match previous expeditions. The bacteria living around these vents appeared genetically distinct from every catalogued species on Earth. Some microorganisms produced enzymes capable of functioning under temperatures and pressures that would instantly destroy ordinary proteins. Elena quietly wondered whether similar organisms might exist beneath the frozen oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus. If life could flourish here without sunlight, perhaps it could emerge anywhere liquid water and energy coexisted. Suddenly Marcus noticed something unusual on the forward sonar. A perfectly straight structure extended nearly 100 meters beyond the nearest vent field. Natural rock formations rarely produced such geometric shapes. They slowly approached while their lights swept across the darkness. At first it resembled a basalt ridge, but the closer they came the stranger it became. The formation consisted of enormous hexagonal columns standing side by side with remarkable symmetry. Thin streams of warm water flowed between them, carrying glowing bacteria that outlined every edge with soft blue light. Small fish avoided the structure completely despite abundant food nearby. Even the crabs remained several meters away, forming a distinct empty circle around the columns. Elena instructed Priya to deploy another camera drone. The machine floated silently toward the formation until it reached approximately 20 meters from the nearest column. Without warning, every instrument aboard the drone malfunctioned simultaneously. The video feed dissolved into static before the connection disappeared entirely. Seconds later the drone drifted back toward the submersible, completely lifeless. Its batteries were fully charged. Its electronics showed no visible damage. Yet every circuit had permanently failed. Priya stared at the diagnostic screen in disbelief. "It's as if something erased the entire operating system," she whispered. Elena carefully examined the recovered housing. There were no scratches, no pressure fractures, and no signs of corrosion. Only one detail seemed unusual. A fine layer of shimmering microorganisms covered the drone's exterior, emitting faint pulses of blue light synchronized perfectly with the mysterious heartbeat echoing through the surrounding water. Before anyone could discuss the discovery, the hydrothermal vents around them suddenly dimmed as thousands of glowing bacteria reduced their light simultaneously. For several endless seconds, the entire vent field became unnaturally dark. Then, from somewhere beyond the towering columns, two enormous points of pale blue light slowly opened like ancient eyes awakening after centuries of sleep. For several endless seconds, nobody inside the Asteria moved. The twin blue lights remained perfectly still beyond the hexagonal columns, suspended in absolute darkness like two distant stars beneath the ocean floor. Marcus instinctively reduced the submersible's engine output until only the quiet hum of life support systems remained. Even the mysterious heartbeat echoing through the water seemed to pause. Elena slowly increased the sensitivity of the external cameras. The image sharpened little by little as microscopic particles drifted through the beams of light. Then the enormous shape surrounding the glowing eyes finally emerged from the darkness. It was not a machine. It was alive. Its body stretched for well over 30 meters, making even the largest known whale appear small by comparison. Layers of translucent tissue reflected faint blue light while hundreds of delicate filaments floated around its body like endless ribbons moving in slow motion. Instead of scales, the creature possessed overlapping plates that resembled polished volcanic glass. Each plate shimmered with colonies of bioluminescent bacteria living symbiotically across its surface. Its enormous eyes contained no visible pupils, only pale blue lenses that glowed softly from within. Despite its impossible size, the animal moved with astonishing silence. No sudden movements disturbed the surrounding water. Every motion appeared carefully measured, conserving energy in a place where food was precious and survival demanded efficiency. Elena stared without blinking. No known marine animal matched anything she was seeing. The body combined characteristics of cephalopods, siphonophores, and deep-sea fish while belonging to none of them completely. It represented an entirely unknown evolutionary branch. Priya's instruments suddenly came back to life without explanation. The sonar, previously filled with interference, now displayed hundreds of moving signals surrounding the giant. Smaller organisms emerged from behind the hydrothermal chimneys, revealing that the enormous creature was not alone. Dozens of juvenile forms, each between 2 and 5 meters long, drifted alongside it. Their bodies glowed with softer shades of turquoise and violet while tiny crustaceans cleaned mineral deposits from their armored skin. It resembled an underwater nursery hidden thousands of meters beneath the surface, protected from predators by the hostile environment surrounding the vent field. Elena whispered her observations into the recording system while attempting to control her excitement. The adults appeared to release faint clouds of nutrient-rich particles that fed both the juveniles and the dense bacterial colonies covering the rocks. Instead of hunting continuously, these giants seemed to cultivate an entire ecosystem around themselves. The hydrothermal vents supplied chemical energy. Chemosynthetic bacteria transformed those chemicals into organic matter. Small invertebrates consumed the bacteria. The giant creatures then regulated the entire community, functioning as ecosystem engineers much like elephants shape African savannas or beavers transform rivers. They were not simply surviving here. They maintained the balance of the deep-sea forest itself. Marcus carefully maneuvered the asteria a few meters closer. None of the creatures displayed aggression. The largest individual slowly turned its massive body toward the submersible. Thousands of tiny light-producing cells rippled across its skin in organized waves. Blue shifted into green. Green became violet. Violet faded into white before repeating the sequence again. Priya immediately recognized a pattern rather than random flashes. "These aren't biological reflexes," she said quietly. "It's structured." Elena recorded several minutes of the light pulses before allowing the onboard artificial intelligence to analyze them. Within seconds the system detected mathematical regularity. Certain sequences repeated at constant intervals while others responded directly whenever the submersible adjusted its position. The glowing patterns resembled communication rather than camouflage. Marcus tested the hypothesis by briefly flashing the Asteria's external navigation lights 3 times. The enormous creature remained motionless for several seconds. Then waves of blue light spread across its body in precisely 3 distinct pulses before continuing into a longer sequence unlike anything seen before. The crew looked at one another in complete silence. Whatever lived beneath the hydrothermal vents had not merely noticed them. It had answered. Before anyone could react further, the mysterious heartbeat echoed through the water once again. This time it was louder than ever before. Every giant in the nursery immediately turned toward the same distant direction beyond the hexagonal columns. Their graceful movements stopped. The glowing patterns vanished from their skin. Even the smallest juveniles gathered tightly around the adults. Whatever had produced the heartbeat, these magnificent creatures feared it. Not a single creature moved after the heartbeat echoed across the abyss. The giants that only moments earlier had surrounded their young with calm confidence now appeared frozen in silent anticipation. Their glowing skin had faded into complete darkness, making their enormous bodies nearly invisible against the volcanic landscape. Even the hydrothermal chimneys seemed quieter, their shimmering mineral-rich plumes drifting upward like smoke through the freezing black water. Inside the Asteria, nobody spoke. Every member of the crew instinctively understood that they were witnessing a behavior refined through millions of years of evolution. These animals were not reacting to curiosity. They were reacting to danger. Marcus slowly rotated the submersible toward the direction every giant was watching. The external floodlights illuminated only endless darkness beyond the last line of black basalt columns. Sonar refused to provide a clear image. Instead of distinct echoes, an enormous moving distortion appeared on the display, as though something far larger than the scanning range itself was bending the returning sound waves. Priya frowned at the monitor. She recalibrated the frequencies twice before finally whispering, "This is an equipment failure. Something out there is absorbing the sonar." Elena's pulse accelerated. No known marine organism possessed tissue capable of dampening acoustic reflections over such a massive area. Yet the evidence appeared directly in front of her. Suddenly, thousands of tiny deep-sea fish erupted from the darkness. Species that normally lived scattered across different ecological niches fled together in complete panic. Lanternfish, dragonfish, hatchetfish, transparent shrimp, and delicate jellyfish streamed past the submersible in a living river of silver flashes. Even blind crustaceans abandoned the hydrothermal vents where they spent their entire lives. Predators and prey ignored one another as survival overwhelmed every natural instinct. The biological order of the abyss had collapsed into pure escape. Then the temperature sensors changed dramatically. Water that had remained close to 2 degrees Celsius suddenly climbed to 6. Then 10, then 14 degrees without the submersible moving from its position. The increase could not be explained by nearby hydrothermal vents alone. An immense heat source was approaching through the darkness. The giant guardians responded immediately. Instead of fleeing with the smaller creatures, they slowly positioned themselves in a wide protective formation around the nursery. The adults formed a living barrier while the juveniles gathered tightly behind them. Waves of pale blue bioluminescence reappeared across their bodies, but this time the patterns no longer resembled communication. They looked like coordinated signals passed from one individual to another. Elena realized she was watching organized social behavior more complex than anything previously documented outside dolphins, whales, elephants, or primates. These mysterious giants possessed strategy. They possessed cooperation. Perhaps they even possessed culture. A low vibration rolled through the hull of the Asteria. It was not loud, yet every metallic surface inside the vessel trembled with quiet resonance. The heartbeat had returned. This time it came twice. Boom. Boom. Each pulse seemed to travel through the water, the rocks, and even the bodies of the crew themselves. Marcus instinctively reduced all electrical output to minimum levels. The cabin lights dimmed. External cameras switched to passive observation. The submersible became little more than a silent shadow resting beside the volcanic chimneys. Then something impossible entered the edge of the camera frame. At first it resembled a moving cliff. The object was so enormous that only a tiny fraction of its surface could fit within the camera's field of view. Dark armor stretched upward beyond visibility, covered with ancient scars and entire ecosystems of glowing bacteria. Massive tube worms, white crabs, and colonies of translucent anemones lived directly upon its skin as though it were part of the seafloor itself. Slowly, impossibly slowly, the colossal body continued forward. Elena estimated its visible height at more than 60 meters, yet she could not determine where it began or ended. Then one gigantic eye opened. Unlike the soft blue eyes of the Guardians, this eye glowed with deep amber light surrounding a vertical black pupil. The pupil contracted as it faced the nursery. The heartbeat stopped. Absolute silence filled the abyss. Every creature waited. Without warning, the largest guardian drifted forward alone, placing itself between the approaching Titan and the young. It spread its countless glowing filaments until they formed a brilliant curtain of blue light across the darkness. The giant did not attack. It simply refused to move aside. For several endless seconds, neither ancient creature moved. Then the colossal amber eye blinked once, closed again, and the unimaginable Titan slowly turned away into the darkness from which it had come. As its enormous body disappeared beyond the reach of the cameras, the heartbeat faded with it until only the quiet whisper of hydrothermal vents remained. The Guardians had not defeated the ancient visitor. Somehow, they had convinced it to leave. The ancient Titan vanished so completely that it seemed as though the abyss itself had swallowed its existence. Minutes passed before the smaller fish cautiously emerged from the cracks between the basalt pillars. Shrimp returned to the warm mineral vents. Clouds of microscopic plankton drifted once more through the faint currents generated by the hydrothermal chimneys. The Guardians slowly relaxed their defensive formation, allowing the younger individuals to leave the shelter of the group. Inside the Asteria, nobody spoke for several moments. The silence carried more weight than excitement. They had just observed an interaction between enormous deep-sea organisms that suggested hierarchy, negotiation, or perhaps territorial agreement. Elena finally broke the silence. We are looking at an ecosystem that rewrites everything we thought we knew about intelligence in the ocean. Marcus nodded while carefully restarting the active sonar. This time the system returned normal readings. Whatever property had distorted the sound waves had disappeared together with the colossal visitor. Priya saved every sensor log in multiple backup systems. She had learned long ago that extraordinary discoveries often disappeared because someone failed to preserve the evidence properly. This mission had already collected more impossible data than many scientific careers produced in decades. Before anyone suggested returning to the surface, one of the juvenile guardians approached the submersible. Unlike the cautious adults, the younger creature displayed obvious curiosity. It circled the Asteria several times before stopping directly in front of the observation dome. Its luminous skin shifted through delicate shades of turquoise, emerald, and violet that pulsed rhythmically across its body. Elena leaned closer to the glass. The changing colors were not random. Each sequence repeated with mathematical precision. Long pulse. Short pulse. 2 rapid flashes. Pause. The same pattern appeared again. "It's repeating something," Priya whispered. Marcus activated every optical recorder. The juvenile slowly swam toward one of the nearby vent chimneys before looking back toward the submersible. It repeated the glowing sequence once more. Then it moved farther away, stopped, and repeated the pattern again. Elena smiled. "I think it's asking us to follow." Marcus hesitated for only a second before engaging the thrusters. The Asteria followed at a respectful distance as the young guardian glided effortlessly through narrow valleys carved by ancient lava flows. The hydrothermal field gradually disappeared behind them. The water became colder. Fewer animals appeared in the darkness. Massive sponge colonies gave way to bare volcanic rock coated with thin films of bacteria that shimmered faintly whenever disturbed by the current. After nearly 20 minutes of careful navigation, the juvenile slowed beside what initially appeared to be a solid cliff. The floodlight swept across the rock face until Elena noticed something impossible. The cliff was covered with perfectly circular openings, each several meters wide, arranged in astonishingly regular rows. Natural erosion could not have produced such symmetry. Hundreds of tunnels disappeared into the mountain like windows in an enormous submerged fortress. The juvenile entered one of the openings without hesitation. Marcus carefully guided the submersible after it. The tunnel widened into an immense cavern beyond anything previously imagined beneath the ocean floor. Thousands of towering mineral columns stretched from floor to ceiling. Their surfaces glowed softly with colonies of bioluminescent bacteria that painted the entire chamber in shades of blue and silver. The illumination was gentle but sufficient to reveal the breathtaking scale of the hidden space. Everywhere the crew looked, guardians rested peacefully among the columns. Some slept motionless while others cared for young or slowly exchanged patterns of light with nearby companions. There were no signs of conflict. No frantic movement. The chamber radiated calm. Elena realized they had discovered not merely a habitat but an entire civilization sanctuary. Then she noticed the columns themselves. They were not random mineral formations. Each surface contained thousands of parallel grooves etched into the stone with astonishing precision. Some grooves were shallow while others reached several centimeters deep. Curved lines intertwined with straight channels in repeating combinations unlike any known geological process. Priya enlarged the camera feed. "These aren't cracks." Elena stared in disbelief. "They're engraved." Marcus slowly rotated the submersible toward another column several hundred meters away. It contained different patterns. Every pillar in the cavern appeared unique. Some displayed spirals. Others contained branching lines resembling coral. A few included geometric arrangements repeated with remarkable consistency. None looked accidental. The juvenile guardian gently touched one column with its glowing filaments before producing another sequence of luminous pulses. Instantly, 3 nearby adults answered with synchronized flashes. The light reflected across dozens of engraved pillars until the entire chamber shimmered with coordinated blue signals flowing from column to column like information traveling through invisible pathways. Elena's breathing slowed as understanding gradually formed in her mind. These structures were not decorations. They were records. The grooves preserved physical patterns while the creatures used bioluminescence to activate or interpret them. Whether the columns stored history, navigation, communication, or knowledge remained unknown. But one conclusion became unavoidable. Humanity had not discovered a nest hidden beneath the ocean. It had discovered a library older than civilization itself. The glowing patterns continued flowing across the engraved pillars long after the asteria came to a complete stop inside the immense cavern. Every pulse of blue light traveled through the ancient hall with astonishing precision, leaping from one guardian to another before spreading across the carved columns like silent waves racing through an invisible network. Elena watched in complete fascination. The entire system resembled a living language. No sounds echoed through the chamber. No physical contact was necessary. Light itself carried information. Every flash possessed a specific duration, brightness, direction, and rhythm. The more she observed, the more convinced she became that the guardians were not producing random displays of bioluminescence. They were speaking. Priya immediately began recording every sequence with high-speed optical sensors capable of capturing changes invisible to the human eye. Ordinary cameras recorded 30 frames every second. Her specialized instruments captured nearly 10,000. The first playback revealed something extraordinary. Individual flashes that appeared continuous to human vision actually consisted of dozens of microscopic pulses arranged into remarkably complex patterns. Some repeated every few seconds. Others appeared only once before disappearing forever. Elena compared them to human alphabets, musical notation, binary code, and whale vocalizations. None matched. The communication system was multidimensional. Brightness, duration, color, position, and timing all carried meaning simultaneously. A single luminous gesture contained more information than an entire spoken sentence. Marcus slowly rotated the submersible while keeping a respectful distance from the guardians. No creature appeared frightened by their presence anymore. Several juveniles drifted close to the observation dome, curiously examining the strange metallic visitor from the surface world. One reached out with a delicate filament and gently touched the reinforced glass. Thousands of microscopic light-producing cells instantly spread across the transparent surface like glowing snowflakes before fading away without leaving any trace. Priya analyzed the residue through external chemical sensors. The glowing cells contained proteins unlike any previously catalogued organism. Their molecular structure allowed them to emit several distinct wavelengths of light with incredible efficiency while consuming almost no energy. Elena smiled as another realization formed. Evolution in perpetual darkness had transformed light into something far greater than simple illumination. Here, where sunlight had never existed, light had become memory, language, identity, and history. Suddenly the engraved pillar nearest the submersible began to glow from within. The carvings themselves emitted faint blue radiance as billions of dormant bacteria hidden deep inside the grooves awakened simultaneously. Lines illuminated one after another, forming flowing geometric patterns that slowly climbed toward the ceiling. Every nearby guardian became perfectly still. Even the curious juvenile stopped moving. It resembled an audience respectfully observing an ancient ceremony. Elena carefully increased the camera magnification. As more grooves illuminated, recognizable images gradually emerged. At first she believed they were abstract symbols. Then she realized the glowing lines depicted enormous creatures swimming through ancient oceans. One sequence showed hydrothermal vents forming beneath violent underwater volcanic eruptions. Another illustrated entire species appearing and disappearing across immense spans of time. Giant predators hunted unfamiliar prey while strange spiral organisms drifted through waters completely unlike today's oceans. The carvings were not merely decorative. They represented events. They told stories. Priya overlaid the changing patterns onto a digital timeline. Surprisingly, the sequences followed chronological order. Geological upheavals appeared first. Biological diversification followed. Extinction events interrupted the progression before new ecosystems emerged. The Guardians were displaying history itself. Elena's heart raced. Human civilization preserved knowledge through books, stone tablets, paper, magnetic storage, and digital memory. These creatures had chosen an entirely different path. They recorded history inside living mineral libraries maintained continuously by symbiotic bacteria and interpreted through generations of bioluminescent communication. The oldest records could potentially predate humanity by millions of years. Marcus quietly whispered, "We've spent centuries believing only humans preserve history." Nobody answered. There was nothing to add. Then the glowing timeline reached its final sequence. Unlike the ancient scenes before it, this image appeared surprisingly recent. The carvings displayed a brilliant sphere descending from the distant surface into the deep ocean. Around it swam unfamiliar shapes unlike any guardian. The glowing sphere continued downward until it reached this very cavern. Elena immediately recognized the object. It resembled no natural organism. It resembled a machine. The scene ended with the strange visitors leaving behind several tall pillars before disappearing forever into darkness. Every guardian in the chamber slowly turned toward the newest row of engraved columns located near the center of the cavern. Unlike the ancient weathered pillars surrounding them, these stood perfectly smooth and almost untouched by time. The juvenile that had guided the Asteria gently approached one of the empty columns. It touched the polished surface with glowing filaments before looking directly at Elena through the observation dome. Then it produced the same repeating sequence of luminous pulses 3 times in succession. Priya's translation software highlighted an astonishing possibility. The repeating mathematical structure suggested invitation rather than warning. Elena stared at the untouched pillar while a quiet realization settled over the entire crew. The library was still growing. The Guardians were not merely showing humanity their history. They were offering humanity a place within it. For nearly an hour, no one inside the Asteria spoke about returning home. The invitation offered by the Guardians had transformed the mission from scientific exploration into something far more significant. Humanity had entered a place where history had been preserved continuously for millions of years. Every instinct told Elena that the discovery belonged to the entire world. Yet another part of her mind whispered an uncomfortable question. Was the world ready to know? Marcus finally broke the silence while reviewing the remaining battery reserves. Mission Control expects our first transmission in less than 3 hours. His words immediately changed the atmosphere inside the submersible. Until that moment, they had existed in isolation beneath 6 kilometers of water. Now the surface suddenly felt very close. Priya looked at the growing collection of recordings filling the storage drives. Hundreds of hours of ultra-high-definition video. Chemical analyses unlike anything in modern biology. Acoustic recordings. Three-dimensional scans of the living library. Enough information to become the greatest scientific discovery in history. Enough information to trigger consequences impossible to predict. Elena stared at the untouched pillar the juvenile had shown them. Several guardians had gathered around it once again. They produced soft pulses of blue and green light while gently touching the polished stone. Slowly, new luminous lines appeared inside the surface. The pillar was recording something. She realized, with growing amazement, that it was documenting their visit in real time. Humanity was no longer simply observing the library. Humanity had become part of its history. Priya suddenly froze while examining one of the translated optical sequences. Her experimental pattern recognition software had finally found statistical consistency. It could not understand the complete language, but it had identified recurring structures that resembled names or identities. One sequence appeared constantly beside images of the Guardians themselves. Another appeared beside the giant amberite titan. A third sequence repeated whenever the carvings displayed strange visitors descending from the surface thousands of years earlier. Then another sequence appeared beside every image of the Asteria. Priya slowly whispered, "They're identifying us." Elena studied the translation probabilities. The software could only estimate relationships, yet one interpretation appeared repeatedly with remarkable confidence. Not enemies. Not strangers. Visitors. The realization carried unexpected comfort. Whatever intelligence guided these creatures, it had chosen curiosity instead of fear. Suddenly an alarm interrupted the silence. One of the long-range passive hydrophones detected artificial sound waves approaching from above. Marcus immediately checked the frequency signatures. They were unmistakable. Another human vessel. Research submarine, he said quietly. Probably from our support ship. Elena felt the excitement disappear from the cabin. Their scheduled communication blackout had expired. The surface had begun searching for them. Within a few hours another crew might descend directly toward this hidden sanctuary. Marcus looked at Elena. If they find this place. Nobody finished the sentence. They did not need to. Scientific discovery would be followed by international attention. Governments would compete for access. Military organizations would demand strategic assessments. Mining corporations would study the surrounding hydrothermal vents for valuable minerals. Tourism companies would dream of impossible expeditions. The peaceful sanctuary hidden beneath the ocean could become the most visited place in history. Or the most exploited. The juvenile guardian slowly approached the observation dome once more. It looked directly into Elena's eyes with quiet patience. Then, for the first time, it extended one slender filament toward the outside communication antenna mounted beside the hull. A brief pulse of blue light traveled through the metal before disappearing. Every display inside the Asteria flickered simultaneously. Priya gasped. Their computers had not malfunctioned. Every recording stored during the mission had been copied into a completely separate encrypted archive that none of them had created. Alongside the duplicate archive appeared a single unfamiliar symbol constructed entirely from luminous geometric patterns. Elena stared at it for several seconds before understanding. It resembled neither human language nor mathematics. Yet its meaning felt strangely obvious. It was trust. Marcus initiated the scheduled transmission to the surface vessel. Mission Control immediately requested status updates, biological observations, geological samples, and confirmation of crew safety. Elena held the microphone in her hand for nearly a full minute before responding. Every member of the crew waited silently. Finally she spoke in a calm professional voice. Mission proceeding normally. Hydrothermal vent ecosystem successfully documented. We experienced minor navigation delays and will begin ascent shortly. No significant discoveries requiring immediate intervention. The message was technically true. Yet it concealed the greatest discovery in human history. Nobody objected. Nobody reached for another microphone. The decision required no vote. Before leaving, the Guardians gathered around the Asteria one final time. Hundreds of luminous bodies surrounded the submersible in complete silence. Their synchronized blue light illuminated the cavern like a living constellation beneath the Earth's crust. The untouched pillar no longer appeared empty. Near its base, among millions of ancient carvings, a new glowing pattern had been permanently engraved. It depicted a small sphere arriving from the distant surface. Unlike the earlier visitors, however, this sphere departed without bringing others behind it. As the Asteria slowly turned toward the tunnel leading back into the endless darkness, Elena realized the Guardians had recorded not only their arrival. They had recorded humanity's first decision to keep a secret. The ascent lasted nearly 9 hours, yet none of the crew slept. The deeper darkness gradually surrendered to shades of blue as the Asteria climbed through layer after layer of the Pacific Ocean. Familiar deep-sea creatures appeared once more outside the observation dome. Lanternfish resumed their nightly migration toward shallower waters. Transparent jellyfish drifted silently through the water column. A giant squid briefly crossed the floodlights before vanishing into the darkness with effortless grace. Everything looked normal again, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. Somewhere far below, hidden beneath kilometers of water and volcanic rock, an intelligent civilization continued its quiet existence exactly as it had long before humans built cities or crossed oceans. Elena replayed the final moments inside the living library over and over in her mind. The invitation. The glowing pillars. The trust. She wondered whether anyone would have believed the story even if they had shown every recording immediately. Perhaps disbelief itself had protected the Guardians for thousands of years. When the Asteria finally broke the surface, brilliant sunlight flooded the observation dome. After so many hours in perpetual darkness, the brightness was almost painful. Waves sparkled beneath a clear morning sky while the research vessel Horizon waited only a few hundred meters away. Crew members cheered as cranes lifted the submersible onto the deck. Scientists hurried forward with clipboards, cameras, and medical equipment. Captain Robert Sinclair welcomed them with visible relief. "We lost contact longer than expected," he said. "Everyone all right?" Marcus smiled politely. "Minor communication problems. Pressure systems performed perfectly." The answer satisfied no one, yet it raised no immediate suspicion. Technicians disconnected storage drives and carried them toward the ship's laboratory for analysis. Elena exchanged a brief glance with Priya. Neither said a word. Within an hour, the celebration aboard the Horizon transformed into confusion. The primary recording servers contained only routine expedition footage. Hydrothermal vents, tube worms, mineral chimneys, ordinary biological samples. There were no guardians. No living library. No enormous titan. Every video recorded after entering the hidden cavern had vanished without leaving a trace. Engineers blamed corrupted memory sectors. Data specialists suspected software failure. They recovered fragments of damaged files but found nothing extraordinary. Priya quietly connected her personal backup drive, confident it contained the missing evidence. The drive opened normally. Every folder appeared exactly where she had left it. But each extraordinary recording had been replaced by perfectly ordinary images of empty rock formations. Frame by frame, every impossible discovery had disappeared. "I checked the checksum before surfacing," Priya whispered to Elena. The files were there. Elena believed her completely. She remembered the mysterious pulse that had traveled through the communication antenna inside the cavern. Whatever the Guardians had done, it had reached every digital storage system aboard the submersible. Somehow the evidence had been selectively rewritten without damaging any surrounding files. It was impossible. Yet impossible discoveries had become routine during the mission. Late that evening, the three crew members met privately inside Elena's cabin. Marcus locked the door before placing a handwritten notebook on the small table between them. Unlike digital records, the notebook contained sketches made throughout the expedition. Drawings of the Guardians. Rough maps of the cavern. Acoustic timing of the heartbeat. Chemical observations. Elena slowly turned each page. Every sketch remained exactly as she remembered. Ink on paper had survived untouched. Priya removed a folded sheet from her pocket. Not everything disappeared. It was a single printout produced by an experimental optical analyzer before the data corruption occurred. Most of the page consisted of meaningless graphs, but one small image remained visible in the corner. It showed a section of the engraved pillar illuminated by bioluminescent bacteria. The resolution was poor, yet one symbol stood out clearly among the glowing grooves. It was the same mysterious pattern that had appeared on their computer before leaving the library. Trust. None of them suggested publishing the notebook. Even with sketches and observations, no scientific journal would accept such extraordinary claims without verifiable evidence. Their reputations would be destroyed long before anyone attempted another expedition. Officially, the mission would become another successful survey of hydrothermal ecosystems. Weeks later, the Horizon returned to port. Governments requested copies of the expedition data. Universities praised the discovery of several new bacterial species. Marine biology journals celebrated improvements in deep-sea mapping technology. Interviews focused on engineering achievements rather than biological mysteries. The world applauded a successful scientific mission while remaining completely unaware of what had truly happened beneath the Pacific. Months passed. Elena resumed teaching marine biology, yet every lecture about deep-sea ecosystems now felt incomplete. She spoke about hydrothermal vents, chemosynthetic bacteria, anglerfish, giant isopods, vampire squid, Dumbo octopuses, and the remarkable adaptations of abyssal life. Her students listened with fascination, believing they were hearing the most astonishing facts the ocean could offer. They were wrong. One rainy evening, long after the expedition had officially ended, Elena returned home to find an unmarked package resting beside her front door. There was no postage. No delivery label. No sender's name. Inside lay a smooth black stone no larger than her hand. It looked like polished volcanic glass. As she lifted it beneath the light, faint blue lines slowly appeared across its surface. The glowing grooves formed a single familiar symbol. The same symbol preserved in her notebook. The same symbol carved inside the hidden library. Someone, or something, had found her after leaving the ocean. Elena carried the black stone into her study and locked every door before placing it beneath a desk lamp. The glowing blue lines slowly faded until the surface looked like ordinary volcanic glass once again. She touched it cautiously with her fingertips. The stone felt surprisingly warm, almost as if a heartbeat pulsed somewhere deep inside it. She retrieved a microscope, but before she could adjust the focus, the blue lines illuminated once more, forming new patterns that slowly shifted across the polished surface. They were not random. They resembled the living symbols she had seen inside the underwater library. Elena opened her notebook and compared every sketch she had made during the expedition. The symbol on the stone was changing to match one she had drawn only days earlier. It was communicating. Before she could continue her observations, her phone rang. The caller ID displayed Priya's number. Elena answered immediately. Priya's voice was tense. "Did anything unusual arrive at your house today?" Elena looked back at the glowing stone. "Yes." There was a long silence before Priya quietly replied. "Then don't tell anyone. I received one too." Marcus called only minutes later. He had not received a stone. Instead, every navigation computer aboard the Asteria had suddenly activated while the submersible sat inside a secure maintenance hangar. The systems had displayed a single coordinate deep within the Pacific Ocean before shutting themselves down again. The location matched the hidden trench where they had discovered the Guardians. None of the technicians could explain how a disconnected navigation system had powered itself without electricity. During the following weeks the three scientists met in secret, comparing every strange event. Priya discovered that her stone reacted to certain frequencies of light. Marcus learned that ordinary magnetic fields caused faint blue symbols to appear across its surface. Elena noticed something even stranger. Every evening, precisely at the same time, her stone emitted a gentle pulse exactly 7 seconds apart. It was the same rhythm as the mysterious heartbeat they had first detected beneath the ocean. She measured it with laboratory equipment. The interval never changed by even 1,000th of a second. One night she decided to test a theory. She placed sensitive hydrophones into the ocean near a remote coastal research station and synchronized them with the pulses from the stone. Exactly as she suspected, the heartbeat echoed through the seawater at precisely the same moment. Whatever produced the rhythm in the abyss was still there, and somehow the stone remained connected to it across thousands of kilometers. Months became years. Officially, the Deep Ocean Expedition became another successful scientific survey. New textbooks mentioned several newly identified bacterial species and improved maps of hydrothermal vent ecosystems. Nothing was written about the Guardians, the living library, or the ancient Titan. The world continued believing that humanity understood the deepest parts of Earth's oceans. Yet strange reports quietly accumulated among marine researchers. Autonomous underwater vehicles occasionally disappeared without mechanical failure. Sonar systems sometimes detected enormous moving objects larger than any known whale before instantly losing contact. Deep-sea cables carried unexplained pulses of electromagnetic energy lasting exactly 7 seconds. Every report was investigated separately and eventually dismissed. Nobody realized they all described the same hidden phenomenon. Elena never stopped studying the stone. One winter evening, nearly 5 years after the expedition, its surface suddenly illuminated brighter than ever before. The familiar symbol of trust slowly dissolved into an entirely new sequence. Unlike previous patterns, this one continued expanding until it formed what looked unmistakably like a map. It displayed the Pacific Trench, the hidden cavern, and several additional locations scattered across every major ocean on Earth. The Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, the Arctic, the Southern Ocean. Similar symbols glowed beneath each of them. Elena's hands trembled. The sanctuary they had discovered was not unique. It was only one library among many. The Guardians had never belonged to a single trench. They belonged to the entire planet. At the center of the map, one final image slowly appeared. It showed Earth viewed from space. Tiny blue lights glowed beneath every ocean basin, connected by delicate lines that resembled a vast living network surrounding the continents. Then another image faded into existence beside it. It showed humanity standing on the surface while countless unseen guardians drifted silently beneath the seas below. The final symbol required no translation. It carried only one unmistakable meaning. We have always been here. We have always been watching. The stone's light gently faded until the room returned to darkness. Elena closed her notebook and smiled quietly. Humanity often believed it had conquered the unknown because maps contained fewer blank spaces than before. Yet the greatest mysteries had never vanished. They had simply learned to remain hidden. Far beneath the crashing waves, beyond sunlight, beyond pressure, beyond fear itself, an ancient civilization continued preserving the memory of a living planet, waiting patiently for the day when humanity would be wise enough to return, not as conquerors, but as trusted guests. The ocean was never empty. It was never silent. And it had never truly belonged to us.